Log on to kcbzradio.com and check the schedule for Situation and Circumstance Live, complete with music, live phone call access, and additional audio and programming. Anthony and TBT would love for you to be a part of the live broadcast and recording of Situation and Circumstance at kcbzradio.com.
Situation and circumstance. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. Can we see each other with only a glance? Situations and circumstances. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. Can we see each other with only a glance?
Cake mix and race mixes, matrix, kill the witches, 3 digits, made of 6s.
Once again, yeah, once again you're here, the KCBZradio.com. Situation and Circumstance. Every second and fourth Tuesday, we sit in that sweet spot of perpetual metamorphosis, layered with perspective. You see, all over the world, there is a situation and circumstance, and I am Mr. Classiq, a.k.a. ACE, or you can just call me Anthony or AJ. It's just so many names. We'll get it right after it's all said and done. But I have my family with me here today, as always. Say something to the people, Tiana and Julius.
Hello.
What's going on? What's going on?
How you doing?
I don't know. How y'all feeling? We real close to Thanksgiving. It's or no thanks, depending on perspective. How y'all feeling this close to then? What's going on in your mind just this close?
I'm just ready to see some family and relax, and just ready to see what's in store for this conversation today as well.
Yeah, because you know them crackers.
He brought the word cracker back.
Goodness.
Hey, for those who have been missing the word cracker, Julius has brought it black. You see what I did there? I said he brought it black. I don't know if anybody heard that.
We're celebrating genocide, man.
Hey, wait! You're starting too soon. He just go with we just saying hello to people. We talking about sweetness, and then he go right to death, genocide, murder, kill.
You're right. I'm happy.
We need to ease them into this.
We need to ease them. I'm with you, Tiana. We're gonna definitely ease them into it. So we'll be right back. We're gonna talk a little bit about Thanksgiving, or rather, no thanks, either or, and some of the pros and cons of that. And stay tuned for the show.
Log on to kcbzradio.com and check the schedule for Situation and Circumstance Live, complete with music, live phone call access, and additional audio and programming. Anthony and TBT would love for you to be a part of the live broadcast and recording of Situation and Circumstance at kcbzradio.com.
Man, so that's a whole lot. Who really knows the true history of America? We talk about Native Americans, but who's native? Is it the brothers and sisters we see with brown skin and straight hair, the Navajos and the Ohlonies? Are they Native Americans, or is it the brothers from Ghana and Sierra Leone and West Africa and Angola? Who was it really that many black people from Africa in 1600 before the before the European slave trade? I don't like saying transatlantic slave trade. Just got to call it what it is. But who's the Native Americans?
Right, and you know, one of the things that I love about the brother that we just listened to, and so by the way, that was Dane Calloway, Untold Truth About African Americans. You can look that up on YouTube for yourself. Once again, Dane Calloway. And prior to that, that was Cornel West, Dear Mr. Man, featuring Prince. But one of the things that I love that he said is that we learned a lot of things in reverse, right? And so we learned that we learned that Africans were brought to America to be turned into slaves. And then that's how black people got to America, or Pan Africans, or etc. But that's how the first Africans came to America. But then we learn that that's not true. So when he says that you're learning in reverse, he's stating that, okay, well, there was some Africans that were, or rather, there were some Americans that looked African that were already in America that were then taken to other places, including Spain and certainly other places that believed in that kind of methodology when dealing with other people. So I love that he's saying that it's separate, or excuse me, that it's in reverse, because there's some couple of other things that happen. What have you heard about how? Tell me what either of you, Tiana or Julius, tell me what you've heard of how we got here and the difference between what you've heard to be the case now.
We as in
our ancestors. So people don't even know who's on here, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a Pan African and there is a Black African American, and then what do you consider
myself?
Yeah,
I'm African. I'm an African American. I don't.
She's like, I didn't know I was gonna have to choose.
I don't know.
On the show.
It's something that I still struggle to define, and I know I'm primarily of African descent, and then I also have my great grandmother who was indigenous in the terms of Native American and African, but I'm majority African, so I would say. What define Pan African?
Well, it's more so of it's a political identification, ideologies. I identify as Pan African. It's essentially someone. We have continental Africans. Mm-hmm. We have Caribbean Africans. We have African Americans.
Yeah.
I don't see any separation. I just see us as African. Mm-hmm. So I'm an African man. Mm-hmm. I'm not an African American. I don't identify with anything American. Mm-hmm. So I'm a lover of everything African. Mm-hmm. Period. There's no them. There's no us. There's no Jamaicans. No Haitians. Of course, they have their own cultural beliefs and traditions, but we just got dropped off on different parts of the world.
But the same people.
The same people. And I think once we accept that, there will be obviously less division, but there will be more, it will be a stronger fight. We'll have more unity. It's like the feminist movement. They need numbers.
Yeah.
That's how they're going to win. Mm-hmm. I believe we as Black people, as African people, once we stop the whole, well, the Nigerians don't like us, and the Jamaicans and Haitians, one speak Portuguese and one speaks French. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's who they colonized them. Mm-hmm. They didn't have a say-so in that. But 100 years later, they're like, you're taking the, nationality is very strong, and I dig it. But I don't see it like that.
Well, and I want you to I want you to be able to speak a little bit more to the specifically to the natives here in America and what that might have looked like. But I also want to remind our listeners that part of what Julius is talking about, you can go back through our archives, and we had a 1 through 4 4-part series on race relations. And you can go back and listen to some of that and find out just a little bit more in terms of Pan-African versus African-American and Black. And when I say versus, I certainly don't mean that in the way of against, but versus in terms of the different reasoning given behind how individuals feel about what they claim and how important that is in our country right now. But in terms of, so what I love about what you said, so then you said there's some African and indigenous.
Yeah.
And then when you said indigenous, for me, I felt like there was something more to that. I don't know if it like almost a hiccup, like indigenous when you say that. What is your grandmother or grandfather or whoever that person is that's indigenous? What do they look like? And
they look like us. I mean, my grandmother. I mean, there's like slightly No, they look like us basically. You could probably find the same features because I said again I'm African and indigenous, and in those indigenous features, I see still African people. So I think they just look like us. And when I say indigenous, I don't say Native American. I just say people. I say indigenous in the way that like we were here, but I don't know. I don't. I usually like to. I prefer to label them indigenous rather than Native American.
You know what's and see, so here's my thing with that. So there's two things. So first of all, I respect that positioning on it.
Yeah.
And then also it's it's not only okay. So some prefer indigenous, and then I know like Malcolm X and different people they were talking about how when you look at the word Aborigine, right? And so most people would associate that, or most people who know even the slightest bit about any anthropology or anything like that, they would know that that's, we think of Aboriginal, we think of Australians, but Aborigine, that word, it comes from meaning like the original inhabitants of a particular area. Yeah. So even if that person wasn't there, maybe they came from somewhere else and got there, they were there first.
Before colonization.
Before colonization.
Yeah.
And so that's where Aborigine would come from. On the other hand, there go Julius. He said, you done heard cracker once again. Julius has said cracker, and he owes us like 5 more crackers before this show is over. So we're going to keep count. There's at least 5 more crackers before this show is over, because sometimes we are talking about crackers. And sometimes it does come up on this show where we talk about crackers. Sometimes it show up.
Oh my!
And then we were talking earlier, like, look, now I'm about to go off on a tangent because I'm thinking about earlier how like I feel like they got over when it comes to like saying harsh names about people. Like, hey, we done been called tar baby and porch monkey and nigger and all these things, and you telling me all we got for you is crackers? Oh boy! No,
I got a couple names under my belt, but I'm gonna just keep it on the low.
Let them go. Let them fly.
Look how he's trying to
thank you. Look at this man.
Things go.
Say it.
This is not.
But look, when I think about Aborigine, I think about what Malcolm X said about that, and with Aborigine it being the original people. And one of the things when you said earlier, you said the native part, and the reason why I went on that tangent because of that. Is because I often think about how, and I just want to just interject a small little tiny piece of tangent here. Mm-hmm. I often think about how names that were okay or at some point, it feels like they then get used oftentimes by comics or comedians, but they get used where it ends up dogging that out, and then once it dogs that out, so like. Retarded was a real thing, and then comedians got it, and people made fun of you if you had the symptoms that allowed someone to say you were retarded. So then it became handicap, and then there's things that happened that made handicap not feel cool anymore to those who represented what that was supposed to mean. And then disabled comes, and then I feel like in the next 5 years, something's going to happen where disabled, and there's actually newer ones than disabled already. I'm just not going to keep going down the list. But the point being, 5 years from now, someone will make fun of what that is, and it will become different. So when I hear like native, the difference between, say, native and indigenous, and even when I throw Aborigine, for me, in my perspective, I'm throwing those all in the same pot of use. But I'm interested in knowing from you, what's the part of native that feels less comfortable for you, considering that that you have ancestry here that are.
Well, when people think Native American, they think like one of you mentioned, I forgot, was like the straight black hair and like specific features and paint and feathers and may well be a part of my history, but that's not the part of my history that I know. I just know that we were here worshiping the land and giving praise to our ancestors is what I was told. And then colonization happened. Nothing was presented to me like this is how we look. This is what a Native American or indigenous person looks like. And I feel like nowadays I see a lot on social media. I follow some like pages for Native American or indigenous people, and they often have like that common look. And I've even been told by my friends when I've told them like, oh yeah, my great grandmother was indigenous and African. They're like, oh well, you don't have this and you don't have that, and it's just like what I told you. Like these are the facts. Like just because I don't follow under the, I don't know if it's archetype, that's the word, but like the set of characteristics that you have in your head about a Native American person, it doesn't make me less indigenous. So,
and that actually hurts us a lot. So, Julius, what are one of the earliest Africans? What were some of, and just from your knowledge, what were some of the earliest Africans called that were here prior to 1492, or prior to any slave ships or pretend discoverers, aka rapists like
crackers?
Crack rapist crackers.
oh my god!
I mean, just
A
call a
rapist
spade a
cracker is
spade.
worse than a regular cracker.
I thought that was the same thing.
Oh,
Because crackers, they never mind. Okay, so
we go.
let's
Y'all need to reel it in.
Hey, reel it in, and mind you, everybody ain't a cracker. Race relations. If you go back and listen to those in our archives, you can find out a little bit more about the differences in how we feel about those kinds of things.
My earliest, I wouldn't say recognition because I wasn't there, but I was taught about the Moors, not in depth, but around 711 is when these intelligent, educated, which I think there's a difference, people roamed around the world.
And you said
exploring.
7-Eleven. I just want to. It's people who hear you say that. And
The
they think
year
that's
711,
the
excuse
cornerstone.
me.
Tell them what.
The year 711,
The year
like 2019, it was a year, believe it or not, 711.
7-Eleven.
So
Even
about
backed out.
about 700 years before the great Christopher Columbus came to these areas that we live on now, it was the Moors. And correct me, please, brother, because I'm not too in depth. But they explored, and they put a lot of Europeans on game when it comes to institutions, colleges, well-being, sewer systems, armies. So it a bit pisses me off when a lot of people tell me, well, black people were brought here.
I've never heard somebody say it a bit pisses me off.
It's slightly.
Just a bit. Just a little bit.
I tell you why. Because it makes it seem as if black people weren't exploring before white people did it. You know what I mean? Like, as if only Europeans traveled countries. So why could we not have been here on this land before it was colonized? Why could we not have been on the land of Australia that's now dubbed Australia?
We absolutely were, right?
That's my point. That's precisely my point. Because the Moors existed, at least to my knowledge, around 711. So 700 years before Christopher Columbus. But that is normally.
And they came in through what was called just FYI, for people who want to look it up, you can go online and you can look up the Moors. You may sometimes have to add, unfortunately, sometimes you have to add black in front of it to get the truth. It's just what it is. But you can look up the Moors and find a little bit more there. And then also, they came in through, you can look up the Barbary Coast, which was from, on your map, that's from like California all the way to like Florida. And they were coming in through there. That's not to say that the Moors were the first. There's no proof for or against that they were the first Africans here. But what it is to say is that Africans who have the same phenotypes. So I want to make sure that when we people have names get so diluted and changed that it's hard to know who you're talking about sometimes. If you're white and you from South Africa and you come to America, guess what? You're an African American. But are Are you? If you live in South Africa and some of those places and you're actually Asian, and when I say Asian, I don't mean like the Asiatic black folks that were here prior to all those things, but I mean if you actually look like what we typically think in our mind of Asian and you live in certain parts of Africa, you're actually considered black because they weren't able to get certain rights and they didn't know what to do when Mandela and everything was going on and all those things were happening. They were like, well, we were here too getting kind of messed around and we had some rights, and so they said, well, you know what, just start filling out your application for this as black. We'll do something in our country that says this is what you are now classified, then you get to do it. So just so you know, I want to make sure that's clear because those names can some kind of get slippery and tricky and makes it hard and often disguises the truth. So you look up Black Moors, you look up Barbary Coast, and you'll see that there was already Africans in America way before. First of all, before any of the slave stuff, there were people who came over as indentured servants anyway. So some of those were Africans and Europeans, etc., Spaniards, and all kind of different stuff. But way back, there was already people who looked like us, meaning the phenotypes, the lips, the nose. So when I say us, you guys don't see us, your listeners. We look like those people who have certain pronounced noses and lips, and our skin has a lot of impeccable melanin. And so we kind of look like that. And so those people that came here even then, they were, they were Moors and looked like us, and they were interacting with the Native Americans that best they can tell either came originally from Asia themselves, or some other theory suggests that it was Australia. And if you look at the original inhabitants of Australia, you'll see why they say that. If you black because of your wide nose and your big lips, if you see some Aborigines from Australia and the people that were there first, you'd be like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
If I'm this, they're so much more pronounced in that way. But their hair is completely straight, right? Everything else is just like us. So there was plenty of us, all that to say, there was plenty of us here. And how that hurts us right now is that if you are African American and you have Native American as part of your makeup, and it happens to be one of those let me respect what you said. If you're one of those indigenous people who were originally here and you looked more like us, you were forced into your African American or your black. What that ended up doing is what that meant is that you, on your birth certificate, it says that you have none of this. You're not claiming any of that indigenous person that you are, because you're just claiming African American, which is not actually. If an Indian or a Native American, you hear what I said there? If an Indian or a Native American, according to them back then, meant that you were somebody who was originally here, and there was also some people who were originally here who look like us, then where is that part of us that's claiming that?
Yeah.
It would mean that we were as just as much as whatever those tribes would be claiming as them. Now, I wish my boy over here could say something, but I believe somewhere in one of those books it says something about lost tribes and different things like that. And there is some speculation that some of those original people here are part of those people who were supposed to be here, was already spoke about. But y'all tell me what you thinking. What? Yeah, I went. Y'all let me tangent off. I said, well, hell, they let me just keep on tangenting, and I tangent, and then the listeners was probably like, "Is this his show? Is it other people there?"
This is our show.
I got the tangent in. Sometimes I be tangenting.
Well, I don't know. It's a rough concept because there's people we can historically track who was here pre-colonization, but I don't believe in there being a rightful owner of any land, because I feel like the earth is meant to be just like taken care of by people, and that people, but obviously we've complicated that over some time, because we've divided ourselves, which is, they say, is a natural human thing to divide ourselves and to group up in certain groups for as means of survival. But yeah, I don't. What you making that face for, Julius?
Here you go.
Making that dookie face.
I don't. Lord have mercy. I don't have to. There doesn't have to be a destruction of land. That's my only thing, man. If someone wants to come over and give love and all that good stuff, cool. But white supremacy has ruined lands for centuries. I mean, look at global warming. This land was here for hundreds of years, and it's deteriorating at a rampant rate. Mm-hmm. And that's all because of one, capitalism, but colonialism, and that's white supremacy at its finest. It's all about money. They have no care about human life.
Yeah.
About pouring it up. Okay, we get it.
This for y'all too, for the people. Here you go. Look. Put your cup up. Put your cup. There you go.
Wow.
Expensive stuff. There's stuff called $2,000 a bottle.
That's my problem. It's not the sharing of lands. It's not the mixing of cultures. It's when one tries to take over.
Yeah, it's like the historical context.
Yeah.
At this
like,
point,
Jesus.
damage has been done, and measures need to be taken as a result of that.
Right.
It's not like, say, if we were already kumbaya from the jump, like, all right, that'd be another story. But because things have already happened, we're born at a time where things have already happened.
And I ain't got time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Oh, don't do that. Y'all feeding into.
Ain't nobody got time.
I wasn't going there. I'm saying I don't have time for the kumbaya. The whole Thanksgiving stuff, man. Like, I'm going to call a spade. And I often get scrutinized for saying cracker, as if there's no meaning to that word, right? So
I'm not going to scrutinize you because I feel like you should come up with a word that's more potent than even that.
See, thank you for saying that.
Ooh.
Thank you, but
potent.
It's like
potent cracker.
There's a
oh my gosh.
There's a demographic out there who doesn't like when black people speak truth because it seems like we're too feisty, like we're sensitive,
yeah.
Right?
But the whole world is out to get us
day to day.
Yeah,
and we have to wake up and feel that every day, unless you could be at home by yourself with nobody in there to call you nothing out your name or anything like that. You can just be in the house by yourself, not even watching TV or none of that, and maybe in there and something you might either a piece of mail or something that you heard on the radio. Something's gonna happen that reminds you that you're black and not in the positive way. There's always something that I'm that person that said I am trying to be as culturally relative as I possibly can. Yeah. I am trying to. I love multiculturalism. I do believe that we all can exist together, et cetera, et cetera. I do believe race and all these different things is a construct, a social construct, all of these different things. I do believe that to be the truth. But that don't stop me from waking up, looking like me, and having somebody remind me I look like me by their ignorance. And so then it makes me have to keep dealing with it. So when people be like, you guys keep on talking about that
just
stuff.
Just let it go. Forget about it.
Right. What are you? You couldn't possibly.
Your life is manipulated by it.
Right.
Yeah. I get it. I for sure get it. Yeah, speaking of our indigenous people, let's get into this next. It's like kind of a spoken word from a board of indigenous women, and then into Nas's Untitled. Yeah, let's hear that.
Log on to kcbzradio.com and check the schedule for Situation and Circumstance Live, complete with music, live phone call access, and additional audio and programming. Anthony and TBT would love for you to be a part of the live broadcast and recording of Situation and Circumstance at kcbzradio.com.
Hey guys!
This is what happens when your cup runneth over. Not saying your cup is.
My cup is not running over.
Yeah.
Your cup is running over.
Yeah, my cup is overran.
Let's talk about you.
My cup is white.
Let's reel it in, right? Let's reel it in. Is that what you told me earlier?
I guess we can. But that was a statement from Nas. That was a very profound song, and prior to that, the spoken word from those women, it just really spoke to me because they're just speaking about like just the celebration of the massacre of their people and how it was celebrated by having the feast. It's like, yay, okay, they're dead. We conquered another village, aka we killed all these people, and we can take it over now. Let's have dinner. Let's celebrate. So like every day on this year, we're gathering around with our families and we're eating and we're celebrating, but unknowingly we are carrying on the tradition of people, of colonizers who celebrated the massacre of indigenous people. It's just quite sad, which leads me into my next question. How did you guys learn about Thanksgiving coming up? Like, do you remember your earliest memory of Thanksgiving or learning about Thanksgiving, like what you thought of it?
I'm not the earliest. I remember, well, my dad, he's always been the type to just give me a shot with no chase. So he's always liked the holiday for food, and he's a Cowboys fan. So his Cowboys play every Thanksgiving, and he likes to eat a lot. So he's loved that part of it. But he always told me that it was some white people came over and just killed a whole lot of brown people. And
I love how you said white people came over because there's a difference between white and cracker.
See,
well, let's just wait. You ain't got to finish your story. Go and finish. If you break into that right now, your story might not get told.
So it was a very fine white people, okay, and I'm being facetious. But it wasn't really in depth when Pops told me all that good stuff. I was young. He just told me that some white people killed some brown people, and we're celebrating it now. But we got rid of Christopher Columbus Day.
He told how old? Wait. How old were you when you were finding that out? Which
5. His dad was
it was when it was celebrated. Like you go to school, and they put hats on you. You know the little cardboard paper hats on you of turkeys.
That's what I was gonna say.
Right, like, and I come home.
Y'all a little different age. We didn't have to wear them weird hats.
That's a good thing.
I celebrate this massacre.
And I come home with a hat of a turkey, and my dad is like, "Take that off," and I'm like, "Why?"
You got a turkey hat on. That's why.
Julius, his dad smacked the hat off his head.
None of my sons came home with a turkey hat, or I probably would have slapped their hat off too. Get that turkey hat off.
Ignorance is bliss, right? Ignorance is bliss, and that's why, like, Tiana has a show called Out of the Cave. Right?
Out of the Cave. We shout that out.
We go for surely shout that out.
Yeah.
But I was in the cave.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about that because it's not their job. It's not the oppressor's job to tell us, to give us information,
and they won't,
to free ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually not beneficial for oppressor to educate the oppressed.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense from that perspective
at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just walking around with a turkey hat on, thinking it's all good.
Lit.
Yeah.
Gobble,
and I think like 80% of teachers are white, and the majority are women. That's a huge percentage for them.
Go ahead.
No, I'm as a black man.
I'm trying to see how you going
boosting the agenda of the white male.
I was just trying to see what was going to happen there.
I'm saying we need black people to teach black history. Black women can teach black history, but I'm saying white women have
a whitewashing of history.
Right?
Thing, yeah.
I'd even change it from there. I believe that we need history needs to be taught more from the perspective of the losers. As long as the winners are teaching history, it will always be biased.
Always, yeah.
But if the losers are, and when we say losers, that actually represents a larger margin of people. So people that don't feel like, there's some people out there like, we don't need to know more about black history. You got a whole month. We need to learn more about how the women have been oppressed. Then there's someone, we need to learn. And then there's some other people, you need to learn a little bit more about what the LGBTQ done been through, the trans community have, and everybody has that thing, right? Yeah. But if the history was told by the position of the losers, who often tell more more of the truth, then we would know what was really going on instead of painting someone and depicting someone as something other than what they are. So that's why we do what we do, right? That's why you'll never hear a show from this company that I'm in here on that I don't say the name rapist anytime I mention Magellan or Columbus or certain people. I'm going to always say rapist in that name because I want you to associate that with that. I don't want you to associate it with otherwise. What will we associate it with? Discovering someone where people were at.
But see, because you make a good point, because you said the losers, right? So like a marginalized group. But what white people have done, what white women have done, is played the biggest trick on the world to make us believe that they're oppressed. They have been the second biggest oppressors besides white men. So when I say teachers have been predominantly white and then women. Yeah. White women have been the biggest oppressors towards the world, especially black men and women. So I don't have time to hear.
Wait, when you say they've been the biggest oppressors, are you saying they've been the biggest oppressors intentionally? Like, a bunch of white women got together and said, "Let's oppress." Or do you believe that it was something that's unintentional, like many of us who promote things that we learn later are not cool, right? So I remember when there was a bunch of black people who celebrated Abraham Lincoln. They celebrated him. And so if they celebrated Abraham Lincoln because of the things that he did, and then I remember being in second grade or third or one of those, and just like you're saying I didn't have to wear the turkey hat, but now that I'm thinking about it, maybe mine was worse. I remember when they wanted us to draw these beautiful pictures of Abraham Lincoln. Right? Now, I would get in trouble quite a bit because I was a kid that was full of questions, and people that weren't ready to ask questions, sometimes that leads you to trouble. And I remember when I came home with this thing and I looked in encyclopedias, because if you're on restriction a lot, you have to find things to do in your room, and I would read those all the time, and I found out I was a bad little kid, or rather, I was a kid who did bad things. Never was I bad, I just was misunderstood. People wasn't on my level then. Old souls. Anybody listening, an old soul, touch your heart and say, yeah, I was misunderstood. They wasn't ready. They wasn't ready for
preacher.
But I tell you, I think about how when that happened, and I seen in those encyclopedias how even now, mind you, this was in the mid 70s, so you didn't know what you didn't know, right? And so when I saw that it said that Abraham Lincoln had slaves himself and still thought that people that were of African descent were 1/3 of human or 1/10 of a human or those kind of things, that hurt me because I kind of thought this was big. I had been built up to think this was a hero. Yeah. So I remember being hurt from it. Like, what? Not Abraham Lincoln? Mind you, I have an uncle, one of my favorite uncles. His name is Abraham Lincoln Jackson. Wow. One of my favorite uncles. That's Jackson. And I know that my grandfather or grandmother would not have named him that unless they thought that this was a man of great fortitude, gratitude, and respect and integrity. So they named him after that, right? But then I learned this thing, and I remember going back to the teacher, and I said, well, and I raised my hand, she do that look that I always get from most of my teachers. Like, what you gonna say? Yeah, here go little Anthony, ready to ask another question. He always got questions.
Gotta ask.
Well, I saw that he had slaves, so why would I go? And this was third grade, and I remember I had to go to the office, and then they had to call my mom. I don't even know if my mama remember that. And they had to call her there because I refused to color this picture and say anything nice about this man that I found these other things out at that age.
Yeah, straight up.
Right? And it sounds exactly what you're saying. That's what's happening in a very holistic way, it seems. So when you ask me what do I think about when I think of Thanksgiving, I think about the family and love, and then I also think about what they did to who's they? What the oppressors
we know who they are.
Right, they know who they.
Who?
I think
Who's
about
they?
What
the
happened.
Anglos.
Oh, the Anglos. Gotcha.
Anglo-Saxons.
I was confused.
Them Anglo-Saxons.
Okay.
I wonder if there, just so you know, callers, if you want to call in and tell us what you think. What's your thoughts? It's Thanksgiving. So I know this sounds like a lot. It sounds like a bit, but
they're like, dang, I'm just trying to eat my dressing and my mac and cheese. You over here talking about
and see my auntie,
genocide.
hey, you know,
That's what this is.
Yeah, well, I remember back in elementary school dressing us, our teacher making us dress like Native Americans and pilgrims, straight up, like having feathers on our head or having a pilgrim hat and singing songs.
Wow.
That's what I remember.
Those are songs. Like what
it was about cornbread, muffins, and stuff. It was about food, but like the fact that they made us dress up like Native Americans and pilgrims, and then later finding out that there was a genocide. So you're making us one half dressed like the people who were murdered, and one half dressed like the conquerors. Like that is wild, wild. And then I find out that that the truth behind Thanksgiving, and that wasn't until much later in life that I really could conceptualize it. Like there was teachers that were just dropping a little bit of knowledge down the line, but in the end, I kind of did my own research as I got older, and it made me realize something about my own history, that my history has been whitewashed as well. Because if they can whitewash the history of America, then they can whitewash my history as well. So that made me really stay aware and try to find multiple sources of knowledge, because
no doubt
we are being fed, especially in school, we are being fed knowledge through a specific lens, and it's because they want to control us and make us think a certain way, as if like Native Americans were in harmony with these people. And then even the cowboys in the Native American movies, like them fighting against each other. Pocahontas getting with her colonizer.
Yeah. Right now, what they did do, what did happen was when Africans was brought over in those slave ships quite a number of years later, hundreds of years later, after we had already been here. What they did do was they did, in a sense, try to what are they called? The Buffalo Soldiers. I think they're, and you can look that up. I believe it's called Buffalo Soldiers. They did get into some of their minds and say, well, you know, this is your enemy too, because they were slaves, so they were doing what Massa said. So I don't want to skip past the fact that there was some Africans that came over that also didn't get along with the indigenous ones that were here. Yeah. But I also want to point out that didn't happen nowhere near as much as it would have seemed, because Native Americans, or rather, indigenous people that were here, they had already met before. So when more Africans came over, it wasn't like, oh, what is that? They're dark, or chocolate it is. They weren't surprised or shocked. They were shocked when they seen, as a matter of fact, they were more shocked and tried to make sense of what they saw when they saw someone as pale as when the Europeans came, considerably. But when the Africans that came, they were already those that were here. And so when they came over, they were like, hey, we already know you guys. You've been here before. They actually gave the name Buffalo Soldier because our hair was thick like wool. And so that was kind of like a buffalo hair would be, which is basically kind of like a warrior way of saying we had nappy hair.
You a tough nappy-headed dude.
Yeah, it's kind of that.
That's fine.
Well, you know what? This is KCBZRadio.com. I want to remind you that you can call in and let us know what you're thinking. What's special to you, whether it's something that's special that has to do with Thanksgiving and some of your memories there, or whether it's something that has to do with just your feeling on why this holiday shouldn't be celebrated without acknowledging what it represents. Whatever you might want to say to that, you can call in at 502.
Log on to kcbzradio.com and check the schedule for Situation and Circumstance Live, complete with music, live phone call access, and additional audio and programming. Anthony and TBT would love for you to be a part of the live broadcast and recording of Situation and Circumstance at kcbzradio.com.
I so appreciate some Erykah Badu. And many, but Erykah Badu is this person that stands in so many centers, and I don't think that people often realize what it takes to stand in so many centers. The center of movements for people of color, the center of what it is to be a woman, and also a woman of color. In many positions, the center of art and what that looks like as expressed through somebody who is those other things. And she's just an amazing person. When you come from hip hop, people be forgetting that when you think about hip hop and how, well, but maybe I shouldn't go there because we talk about Thanksgiving. So maybe I can give you a spin on it where it's like hip hop and Thanksgiving, right? But when I think about hip hop, I think about it being one of the ways that I learned what I know, as a reason being why there has been years that I have enjoyed Thanksgiving in many different ways. The early me thought like most people, and most people, I believe, feel like when you have this conversation about how many people died or the genocidal things or any of those things, people are often reminded of, you know what, I do this because it brings family together.
I dig it.
And me too. And so my early years, I know that prior to the break, Tiana had asked the earliest Thanksgiving memories or something to that effect. And it's like, they're all wonderful ones. There's all, and I had, and my mother, who I'll be seeing this week, celebrating in a different way than what she's used to. We'll get into that if we have time. But my mother was the type that when we had Thanksgiving, it was just like TV in the 80s. So first of all, there was only 13 channels, right? If there was a black show, it was the only show, and if you were black, you were watching it because there wasn't no competition of what you was gonna watch. And one of the things that happens from then even till now is like there's always this Thanksgiving show where people realize that it's not about the food, it's about being thankful, it's about enjoying, helping other people. It's probably like a homeless person in whatever the sitcom is, and then they end up at your table, and some other people that, whatever it is. And then I grew up with that. Like there would occasionally be, and oftentimes be, individuals who didn't have nowhere to go, or even just a person who didn't have anywhere to live, and my mother would invite them into the home, and they would just be this other couple of people that we didn't know in the home, and everybody would just enjoy and do what they do. So there's so much to that. And then I got older and I started studying and I started seeing like, we celebrating this. Now, I want to say this because I need to make sure that people get the full impact. Studies show that there was between, and they don't have an exact number, but there was anywhere from 60 million to 100 and something million Native Americans in this country, indigenous people in this country, Aborigines in this country prior to Europeans.
Wow.
60 million to 120 million. Today, there are 450,000.
Man.
So that would be like,
Yeah.
that would be like if you had a bag of M&Ms, right? And you took out every fifth yellow one. And those are the people that's left. And all the things you would pour out is gone. It's like drinking a bottle of water and only the cap full. If you took your bottle of water and you poured a little bit into the cap, that cap is what's left. The rest of that water is what's been destroyed by and not just from cold-blooded murder, but by the diseases,
right,
and all those things that came with that. And so the reason that was important for a lot of reasons, but when I found that out, I cried for that. I remember I knew that a long time, but I didn't know the specifics. You know how like at one point you might have knew like, oh, there's some other wicked and weird things going on, but you don't know the actual thing that happened, right? A black woman was treated a certain way in slavery, she was raped and this kind of thing, but you hadn't seen it, so you're like, even though that's hurtful, then all of a sudden you read it and you see, oh, she was held by her feet and they sliced her belly and let the 8-month-old baby fall into, that would be about 8 months when the belly's real full, and slice that and let the baby fall into the ground. I know, listen, listeners, we're gonna brighten it up, but I'm just saying, it would be like, when those things happen, my family, so my kids still being kids at the time, they saw me go through this transition of like, you know what? When we have our Thanksgiving, we're gonna burn some sage. We're gonna do some poems and Native American. We're gonna do some Native American inspired poetry, or rather spoken word. And so there's quite a number of years where we did that. There's a year where I took my students to No Thanks, which is obviously the not celebrating Thanksgiving. At Treasure Island, I took a lot of my students there so that we can be with other indigenous people and do that part of it. I look at it a little bit different, but how do you guys deal with the family part of what this holiday is when you know, because you guys are conscious. So how do you deal with the other part knowing that?
It's tough because over the years, I would say the Thanksgiving holiday was signified a great day for me. I got to eat a lot of food. I love soul food, black eyed peas, collard greens, mac and cheese, all of that. I love it. I love it. And like the fact that this day signifies the day that my family from across wherever came together. We had fun. We laughed. I got to see my cousins and play by my cousins and eat food. It was an amazing day, and then it just got a little dark later down the line because I realized what the day signified. And I wish, like, even now that I can find a time where we can nationally just celebrate the coming together of family and being thankful for our family and the people around us and do the same thing, but it not be related to something so horrible.
Yeah.
And that's rough because it's already been kind of set in stone for so long. Like, this is the thing. Stone. This is the thing.
But it's set because, like, Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we can celebrate, that is for black people. We can celebrate that.
Yeah.
We don't. We turn up on July 4th.
Eurocentric.
And I'm like, what?
But yeah. So the Latinos, same thing. Or Latino,
they can celebrate Mexican Independence
Forgive
Day.
me if I'm not saying that, because depending on what culture you from, Latino, some of those are Latino, Hispanic, Spanish. But yeah, same thing. Yeah. Right? Their Independence Day isn't Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah. See,
it's absolutely not Cinco de Mayo.
No, I got you. It's not even.
Yeah.
But they turn up on that day.
They do.
And I feel like it's like, shit, gift.
I mean, if you could turn up, but because we don't get rid of...
Get what you can.
You said, like, Thanksgiving, it can't go away. Like, it's just... But it's capitalism. Yeah. That's really what it is. Because Christopher Columbus Day is now Indigenous Peoples Day. But you're not making no bread off that day. So there's no Black Friday. Yeah, so you can just dub that something else easily. But Thanksgiving is like, nope. That's the most busiest time to travel. So gas prices go up. Hotel prices go up. Flight tickets go up. And then you got Black Friday the day after, and everybody lines up for days. You know, so it can't be eliminated. Not in America. It just can't be. This country was founded off of white men, patriarchy, as well as capitalism. And those two things are a deadly combo. Like, those two things can't be stopped. And that's what we have to try to dismantle. It's not white people. When I say crackers, it's not like a specific person. It's a thing. You know, like it's a thing. It's a system. It's not a particular person. I would never get at a particular person.
Yeah.
That's fighting the wrong thing.
We're fighting a system. All of
us. The system must be dismantled.
Kind of like a crackamocracy.
Wow. Let me write that down.
God.
Say it again for me.
Why?
Say it one more time for me.
You heard that first here at KCBZRadio.com. Trademark crackamocracy. That's trademarked by the good people at here. And here's where we are.
And he's writing it down. I'm gonna head out.
Oh, that's how,
that was good. But because to answer your question, how do you deal with that? I don't. You know, and then I get called
what do you mean when you say, so do you, like, okay, Thanksgiving's coming up. How are you going to spend the holiday?
I'm going to be at home doing everything that I've been doing for the last days.
How is
other people are spending the holidays differently.
Around you?
Right.
Like, does your family, I guess we're asking, or I'm not, so, does your family celebrate that holiday at home where you will be?
It's funny because a lot of black people say, I don't celebrate that holiday.
They love
But they do.
Thanksgiving. Black
They
people
do.
love
So
Thanksgiving.
my family's coming out,
Cut it.
and they spending hundreds of dollars on food and all this good stuff, which is cool. Just call it what it is. You do celebrate it, but my routine is the same thing. I'm waking up, I'm cooking, I'm watching TV. The same thing that I did today.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when Juneteenth rolls around, that's when I wouldn't say dress up, but that's when I'm hitting people. Hey, you want a link? Hey, you trying to do a barbecue? Like, that's what I believe black people in America should be. Not should be, but I would advise us to take more time and thought into that holiday. But it's so like, oh, it's the last Thursday of November. We have to.
Well,
like it's ingrained in us.
Because we care. Like
no,
like,
it's not.
No. Well, this way, what I mean when I say is it because we care. I mean, is it like
We've been conditioned.
That's
exactly.
Our whole lives
Exactly.
our teachers are
That's
like,
what it
this is
is.
an important day. This is an important day. This is how we celebrate. You sing the songs. This is what you eat.
Yeah.
Like, who is celebrating it? If you're not celebrating it, you're an outcast.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get older, and then you continue that tradition because, and you have days off. You have the day off of work, so it's like if you're not celebrating,
wonderful memories.
All the restaurants are closed.
Meant when you had that time
exactly.
off, especially when
it's
you
nostalgia,
you didn't even know you didn't know none of the bad stuff either.
Nope.
Keeping that in mind,
and
because if you Muslim, not to take from any, but if you Muslim, you likely not only knew all that stuff. I mean, if you black Muslim in America,
mm-hmm.
you not only probably knew all of that stuff, but you probably not celebrating Thanksgiving.
True, that's true.
But it's because it was stricter, and we are going to talk. Don't we have a show coming up called Religionish?
That's a good one.
Where we talk about a little bit later in December, we go through it. Like we talk about whatever, and it's going to be some people that's going to be a little upset when they hear some things people have to say because they some Christians or they are some native believers of Wiccanry. All that. We're going to talk about Wiccans and all that. We go like, what's a Wiccan? Somebody who, a witch. Turns out it was the male witches and not the women, but that's something else. But we're going to talk about all that. But yeah.
So what do you do to celebrate? Or do you
celebrate? That's what I do. I have went through different back and forths because I am not by myself. So I can't just decide. So let's say I go and I did all this studying and seeing and it just got to me. Okay, well that's cool. Then I go and I feel like, and they done died and it was 60 million of them and now it's 400,000, 450,000. And I feel all of that. Guess what? Then I go to the house and my four sons is excited, or at that time they excited about that holiday. My mother done called, said she coming down for it. Sisters and other sisters done said this, and my wife in there, and she got a list that she want to cook and make sure everybody's coming over and having a great time, enjoying what family is about. And so even though I feel a certain way, I have to look at I'm not the only one in this.
No.
And so that makes a difference too.
It does.
And I mean, which she's been real good at, and that's kind of so what we've done, to answer your question, is we've balanced that. We've balanced, we'll still have something special during this time, but we're going to have something, and at some point, whether it's during the prayer time, when we're blessing the food or whatever's happening, we're going to say something, and we're going to take acknowledgement of these indigenous people. Forgive me, Tiana, I'm a learning human.
No, it's all good.
I'm going to keep saying it enough to where it gets under my tongue right, because I want to respect that, but we're going to, that's how we've done it. We've saging and, you know what I'm saying, and prayer. And
Is there a bit of a disconnect? Is that, do you think that's why we still celebrate it? Right? Like if we don't celebrate certain holidays because we can relate to some things, right? But if there's no like, that wasn't my people. That wasn't my blood down the road. So therefore, let me continue doing it. Of course, I'm going to pray. I'm going to say, thank you, Native, boom, boom, boom. But like July 4th, right? We weren't free in 1776.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's a lot of black people who strictly deny that holiday because we have more of a connection to it, right? We have President's Day in February, but a couple of weeks before we have Dr. King's Day. So we like, nope, Lincoln, Jefferson, Washington, I don't care, because that was a connection to us. So do you think there's a bit of nonchalantness because that wasn't us per se, not us, but like, precisely, it wasn't us. So therefore, cool.
You're
Let me say
asking a
what's up.
question out loud that's going to cost people some money, and it's going to make some people some money, and it might not be us. But since you said it, let's talk about it. Here's the thing. So just like you said, it's capitalism, right? So Thanksgiving has a big push for a long time. There's capitalism behind that, right? So if we look at 4th of July, same thing, independence of that. Independence of that. And so if you look at what you're saying when you refer to Juneteenth, for instance, well, it hasn't really been promoted in a way.
Right.
Right. It's not promoted that way. We can promote it all we want to, and usually when Black folks promote something, it makes people go for it, right?
Yep.
So we say this is cool in certain ways, then other people are like, But in this case, what's happened is other people that make a lot of money haven't got behind it and made it and made it capitalism and haven't marketed it. And so, yeah, we market it when we're in our own prospective communities and where it's Juneteenth or any of those holidays, even if it's Cinco de Mayo and any of that, any of those holidays, we market a certain way. But now watch this. Okay, so you know who get paid a lot of money on Cinco de Mayo? The liquor store.
Yeah.
They
promote taco spots.
Right. Yeah. They promote, and not just, and no disrespect to anybody, they promote it a certain way.
I got you.
The liquor stores will have a sale on those beverages that are likened a little bit more by that culture whose holiday is coming up, right? Mm-hmm. So in this way, it makes that holiday a little bit bigger because if you're, for instance, let's say if you're Corona, then you promote the hell out of Corona, and then later on, you're going to make a lot of money off of that. So I think that in our situation, I think that that's not happening.
No, it's not. We need to take more control over that.
Well,
I mean, we have to.
We have billionaires who can do that.
We do, but we're more powerful. I agree. But we're more powerful than that. Like you said, we move culture. Yep. We do. They get all them ideas from us. The stuff that happened in the hyphy movement, that was happening before 07 and 08. But when E40, when Miss FAB, when they saw the young cats doing that, they hopped on. So we have more influence and power than the billionaires, than Jay-Z and Beyonce. Like, we can do that today, but we don't. Because there's that disconnect going back to Pan-Africanism. There's a disconnect. We don't even look at ourselves as African. We hate the idea of being African. Right? Not individually, but I'm speaking collectively. I mean, if you say, where do you want to go to vacation? To a black person, Spain, Paris, Switzerland, anywhere. But nobody want to go to Ghana. Nobody want to go to Ethiopia. Nobody want to go to right. But we don't like that idea that we're African.
It's a little more to it than that, but I hear what you're saying.
The media portrayals.
I think it stems from the media. From the media. I definitely,
a lot of our ideals at this point.
No doubt.
It stems from them from birth, though. So if you have a very National Geographic view of Africa from the time you're born, and the way that it looked like you guys both just look, you even had some of that view, and you're half my age.
What do you mean?
That view of, or maybe not.
Because I'm going to, off tops, my first place to go, because I haven't been out of the country yet, and the last on my list was a European country. The last.
Well, I mean a very National Geographic view in terms of, for some of us, what they showed of Africa when we were kids, where showed
as I got older, I got a little wiser, but as a kid, yes.
No, they show flies on their faces. They show bathing with the animals. They show, and then in later years, eventually that would turn into showing AIDS and pretending that. And then pretending that someone that was in Africa had had copulated with a monkey and invented AIDS that way, as opposed to the reality of it being this invented thing. And I'll just say ... We'll talk about that at another show, I guess. But I'm saying, so depending on what you learned about it, has a lot to do with it. And then in some cases, people learn from their parents.
True.
They didn't even hear none of the negative things about being there. But they may have grown up hearing their parents say, they don't even like us over there.
I did.
They don't this
learn
and
that.
this.
Yeah.
And for some people, that was a turnoff. Now, did some Africans say they didn't like us? Yeah. Did some African Americans say they didn't like them? Yeah. Do that make a damn difference? No.
Right.
Because it's such a minuscule amount that said that. And what somebody will do is they'll base a whole country off one or two people.
Yeah.
I talked to an African and they said they didn't like us. So now you saying all those Africans over there in that big old place don't like us because of that. Because you heard one person say it.
But even that, like, if you heard one person say it, right? But we've been, like, the word you used was ingrained. We've been ingrained to dislike black people, right? Like, in America, everything that black people do, we've been ingrained to dislike. So if you go to the motherland, that's for surely out. Because we've heard things about Nazi Germany, and we have people going abroad, study abroad. Despite that, right? You hear Spain. People would still want to go to Spain, which is cool. Go to Spain, but how can we talk about Christopher Columbus and the person who sponsored him was Queen Isabella, the Queen of Spain? Right? So we give white people, we give white-skinned people so much leniency. We don't get that same rope to black people. Black people don't have the same rope that white people do. In no way. I mean, if a white person talks...
How do we get it? How do we give each other... How do black people give black people that amount of rope? Because I feel like
a lot of things, a lot of unlearning.
That's what it is. It's unlearning.
Unlearning.
We have to unlearn everything.
Too.
Yeah,
and unlearning and learning, unlearning the habits and internalized racism that has been instilled in us, and then also learning the truth about our history.
We have to unlearn everything that we have learned to this. Every single thing. And a lot of people. I mean, which pill would you take in the Matrix? It's the blue pill. Or the red.
The purple one.
Or the... Okay.
Watch this. Well, blue and red make purple. And the reason why I said
you don't have that choice.
No,
brother.
you do have that choice.
I said the red or blue.
Hey, purple. Let me tell you. And you know, if anybody should understand it, you should, Julius. I'm going to tell you. It's the purple pill. I'll tell you why. Because that ignorant red pill, if you don't know about it, how can you defeat it if you know nothing about it? If you don't know that it exists, you don't know that you need to be doing something to change it.
Yep.
So you can take that pill that awakens you to all these things, but if you didn't know nothing about this, what have you awakened to? If you don't know that this other pill represents the bullish. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it sounds like you're taking the red. You want that information. You want all of it.
The reason I'm saying the purple is I believe that it's a combination of both that have to happen. It's almost like the disagreement between some of the younger people who are tired of, I remember I was tired of it, but some of the younger people tired of hearing about slavery and all the Holocausts if they're Jewish. Depending on how far or where they want to go, they're just tired of hearing what their older parents have to say about stuff that happened when this and that and this and that. Even though they're trying to put them on game, right? They just tired of hearing that. So to me, I think when I think about those pills in that matrix sense, I feel like there's a necessity to have a little bit of information about both of them. Because you need the past in order to know why the present is like it is. Right. And so you don't fall into the same stupidity.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
You don't even know it's stupid till you was... Well, sometimes you know something stupid ahead of time, but you might have needed to get tricked to know this is a little bit stupid. I think you need both. Purple pill. Purple pill, man. And then and in the Bay, purple passion.
Yay.
Granddaddy purple.
Yay. I don't know what that is. Listeners, we do not know what that is. Wow.
Well, so I'm taking deep breaths. We need to take mindful breaths sometimes when we're getting a little angry. It helps us calm down.
What Tiana said is what we have to do, man. We just have to unlearn.
Yeah.
Everything and then relearn it. But we have to. We can't wait for nobody to do that. Right? So we have to read more. We have to study more. we have to go to these, like, it's a difference between education and intelligence. We're content with education. Education is given knowledge from an institution.
And who told us that?
Exactly. See, I ain't gonna say the C word, but
Colonizers?
normally colonizers. That's wow. That was good.
I thought it was cracker. I was waiting on cracker.
He said, because I thought it was cracker.
Because you know you got like 3 more times to say cracker. You only said it, but you still got 3 more. So just so you know.
So I got about 5 more minutes. Okay, let me see how we can do this. No, but seriously, that's imperative, and I think it starts at home. It has to start at home. My dad and mom, they were very vocal and very blunt about Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving. Teachers were not. So I think that's
Oh,
so Tionne, what you got? What you got?
Well, so look, you know what? We're hoping everybody have a beautiful everything they
Come
need
together
this week to be. I mean, just whatever you need this week to be. If you're celebrating no thanks and you're remembering those who've lost their lives, if you're celebrating thanks and family and whatever it is, we want you to have that. We want to promote really quickly. Coming up right behind this show is Freedom Flow, and I know you're gonna dig this. So you want to stay tuned for that at 9 p.m. Freedom Flow, and then stay tuned. Coming up at 9 p.m. Freedom Flow with repertoire, and that's gonna be real nice. So I know.
Wow.
And we already in here enjoying this the other good part about Thanksgiving week is we already having some fun. And so Tionne,
before you go, we didn't thank anybody.
I think my ancestors.
I gotta thank first God. There's nothing above God.
Shout out to
for
God.
Me. Jesus Christ.
G.O.D.
Jesus Christ.
You know what G.O.D.
Love you, God. But no, seriously, Jesus Christ is the dog.
Then he still saying Jesus Christ.
Say it like that.
But no, my pops, my mom, we don't shout out enough people, man. And we black.
Out.
That's our MO.
Black.
You know, we gotta shout out. So
black.
To all the listeners, we thank y'all.
Thankful for y'all. Thankful for your parents.
Yeah.
Ancestors.
You do some of yours. Yeah. Because now that he done
thankful
started
for
the whole thank thing, and you know black folk love giving shout outs. Now he done started it at this point. We're yours.
I'm just thankful for the space to speak my mind and the space to grow and learn and understand and empathize. And I'm thankful for my ancestors, and I'm thankful for my family and the people here now, the people around me. I'm thankful for love.
I'm thankful for love too. Hey, baby, that's my wife at home. We'll get back to you in a minute here. Thankful for her, and thankful for some of the people that have been sending me a lot of text messages. I can't name all of you, but Amanda, thanks for listening, and you fam, and thanks for Juliet. You know, I don't know if you got to hear another day. Your beautiful music was played. Samurai Queen, Samurai Golden Queen. Shout out to you, and then lastly, shout out to Bro Kia. You know, you out there doing your thing. Strong, colorful, beautiful woman that does your thing for us. And so keep listening to KCBZRadio.com. And as always,
and was that me?
Yeah,
I'm trying to say this as smooth as
This is the
Anthony.
first time
And as always, we promise our listeners that we will continue to make beautiful mistakes. We embrace the opportunity afforded by our ancestors to speak, whether right or wrong, weak or strong. We're learning humans working on liberation and scaffolding a meaningful and fair existence for all. Till next time, my niches. Uhuru.
Uhuru! Hey, baby, give me one more chance. Show me
Situation and circumstance. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. Can we see each other with only a glance? situations and circumstances. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. How can we see each other with only a glance?
Cake mix and race mixes, matrix, kill the witches, 3 digits, made of 6s, KKK or white privilege, old spirits, blood riches, real hatred, fake forgiveness, skinny image, fat problems, I don't really know how we solve them, gods made us, kings gave us, to enslave us, castaways on railways, underground dark web pages, Marvel heroes, connect the zeros, connect the pharaohs, bone marrow, Egyptian princes, dark and ancient, preserve the patience, black and Haitian, white and Asian, British coaches, eat crustaceans, ocean roaches, Illuminati inject the bodies, GMOs, drug hobbies, Aboriginal, Pan-African, old biblical, reincarnation, hip-hop playlists, vocal rangers, sexist wages, sex changes, the game of life, bullets fly, ruin nights, players clueless, kids' rights, humans fight, nature loses, hard of hearing, dolomite, Darwinism, Garvanite, hates a virus, terabytes, hard to live with, parasites, come on!
Situation and circumstance. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. Can we see each other with only a glance? Situations and circumstances. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. How can we see each other with only a glance?
Look, some of us robotic, programmed to follow. Some of us have logic and we wide awoke. Some of us don't got it till we learning slow. Some of us love God as part of having soul. Some of us robotic, programmed to follow. Some of us have logic and we wide awoke. Some of us don't got it, so we learning slow. Some of us love God as part of having soul.
Situation and circumstance. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance.